Okay, so today we're going to dive into a pretty big decision that's, well, quietly reshaping Italy's entire energy future and literally redrawing the map of its seas. It's all part of this plan called PiTESAI. Think of it as this major strategic pivot, moving away from its fossil fuel past and looking straight towards a renewable future. So let's break down exactly how this all went down.
Get this number, 540,414 square kilometers. Just let that sink in for a second. That colossal number, that's the amount of Italian waters, an area bigger than the entire country of Spain that has just been closed to all new oil and gas exploration. So how on earth did a shift that massive even happen? And what does it all mean? Well, that's the story we're getting into right now.
So to really get what PiTESAI is all about, you've got to understand this fundamental clash at the heart of Italy's energy policy. See, on one hand, you've got this long history of looking for oil and gas. But on the other hand, you've got these really firm commitments, the Paris Agreement, EU goals, to totally decarbonize the economy by 2050. It's like two trains heading straight for each other on the same track. Something had to give.
And, a huge part of the problem was the legal framework itself. Italy's mining laws, they weren't some single modern rulebook. Nope. They were this messy patchwork of regulations with some of the core ideas dating all the way back to the 1920s. Seriously. So what you had was this super complex, totally outdated system that was just not built for a world worried about climate change.
Okay, so what did this complicated old system actually look like? I mean, for a company that wanted to go look for oil or gas, it wasn't just one simple step. Oh no. It was this long, drawn-out journey with multiple stages, all governed by this tangled web of old-school rules.
It was basically a three-step process. First up, you had prospezione, which pretty much means to look. This was a non-exclusive permit just to do some broad geological surveys. If things looked good there, a company could then apply for a ricerca permit, which means to test drill. Now this was exclusive, and it let them drill some exploratory wells. And finally, if they actually hit the jackpot and found oil or gas, they'd get a cultivation concession, an exclusive long-term right to actually pump it out of the ground. So yeah, as you can tell, it was a really long and complicated road.
And this, right here, is where all that action could take place. This map shows you what Italy's seas looked like before PiTESAI. You can see these 7 different marine zones, labeled A all the way through G. And these were the spots where new exploration permits could be handed out. This was the old way of doing things, the playing field that was about to get totally flipped on its head.
And that brings us to the solution. The plan for a sustainable energy transition of suitable areas, or as we'll call it, PiTESAI. Now this wasn't just some minor tweak to the rules, no way. This was a complete, fundamental rethink. It was designed to drag that century-old legal mess into the 21st century and get it lined up with Italy's new climate goals.
Now, a change this big doesn't happen overnight. The whole journey really kicked off back in February 2019. A new law came in and basically just hit the big pause button. It set up a moratorium, which suspended all new exploration permits. This gave everyone time to breathe and actually develop a new framework, which all led up to the official adoption of the PiTESAI plan in December 2021.
And just to prove how serious they were about this shift, the government threw in a pretty powerful economic signal in that 2019 law. Get this. They increased the annual fees for the existing production concessions by 25 times. A 25-fold increase. The message could not have been clearer. The game was changing, and it was changing fast.
So what did the PiTESAI plan actually do? Well, its most dramatic, most important action was all about the sea. The plan basically took that old map we just looked at, crumpled it up, and drew a whole new set of lines. And those new lines radically, and I mean radically, reduced the area available for any future fossil fuel stuff.
And you don't have to take my word for it. The plan's own language lays out the core decision really clearly. It was basically a 1-2 punch. First, permanently ban the opening of any new marine exploration zones, period. And second, look back at those existing zones and shut down any area where nobody had even bothered to ask for a permit in the last 30 years.
I mean, the change is just so stark. Before, Italy was this patchwork of zones where expanding fossil fuel exploration was always on the table. Now, that door to any new exploration is slammed shut and permanently locked. It's a total fundamental shift from a policy that allowed for growth to one that's all about restriction.
The scale of this decision is honestly staggering. Out of Italy's entire marine jurisdiction, we're talking nearly 570,000 square kilometers. This plan effectively closes off about 95% of it to any new hydrocarbon activity. 95%! Only this tiny fraction where stuff is already happening is left. It is a massive, massive rezoning of the country's seas.
Okay, so closing off 95% of the sea, that's obviously a huge move. But it's really important to see that this isn't just about stopping something. It's about a strategic pivot. So let's take a look at what this new reality actually means for Italy's future.
Which, brings up the obvious question, right? If the future isn't about finding more oil and gas out at sea, then what is it about? What does a plan like this actually make possible?
Well, the answer really lies in a massive shift of focus. On the left, you've got the past, that old hydrocarbon map all concentrated up in the Adriatic Sea. But on the right, that's the future, a map showing incredible potential for wave and wind energy, especially with those hotspots you see off the coasts of Sardinia and Sicily. What the PiTESAI plan does is it clears the path. It prevents a future where these two different visions for the sea would have ended up in conflict.
So the big takeaway here is this. PiTESAI is so much more than just a restriction. It's really an enabling act. It finally gets national policy in sync with European climate targets. It also makes it safer for companies to invest in offshore renewables because it clears the legal path for them. And maybe most importantly, it sends this powerful signal that for Italy, the future of energy from the sea is green. It's renewable.
And all of this leaves us with one final big question. By walling off nearly all of its seas to new exploration, Italy has made a really definitive statement. There's no doubt about that. But is this the final chapter, the blueprint for a total fossil fuel phase-out? Or is this just the first, bold step on a much, much longer and more complicated road ahead?